Mike, I went to Valve. I went to Washington on Thursday. So I think for this segment, what I was wondering is, I just kind of want you to ask me questions that you are wondering about Valve, about Steam, and I want to see if the conversations came up when we were talking with them. It was a round panel. It was me and like maybe 7 other journalists from other outlets, kind of just in a roundtable format, just asking questions. I think I asked more than most other people because I didn't care to be interrupting people really. So I got a bunch in there, but I still didn't get all my questions answered. So I'm just kind of wondering if like there's kind of things you've always wondered about Valve or what they're doing right now.
Who was at this? It was Gabe Newell and who else?
So they had 4 different sessions, and they were kind of like a half an hour to 45 minutes back to back. And what they would do is they would bring them out in groups depending on what they worked on. So the first group was the guys that were kind of in charge of Team Fortress 2, Dota 2. What's the other Valve game? Counter-Strike. Yeah, and then the second group was like the Steam or the VR group, the group that's working on VR. Then the third one was the Steam group, the people that create and maintain Steam. And then the last one was just Eric Johnson and Gabe Newell, kind of in a general session about Valve as a whole.
So I mean, did you just because with the AMA Gabe did not too long ago, and then this, Valve is so notoriously kind of a closed company. Did you ask them, or what did it kind of come up like? Why are you guys all of a sudden like wanting to talk to people?
So the Steam session just ended, and I was like, "Hey, Doug Lombardi. Doug Lombardi's Steam or Valve's PR guy, very notorious for you send him an email and you don't hear a response." Now, that's not actually been my personal experience, but that is kind of the infamous reputation he has. I'm like, "Hey, Doug, I got to go to the bathroom." He's like, "Okay, go here." Showed me. Radiohead was playing in the bathroom. I go and I come back, and Gabe and Eric are sitting there, and they're starting the next session, and they just start saying, like, "So we were doing the AMA, and Gabe's basically explaining, I hear myself talk all the time, and I get really bored with myself, so I assume that everyone else is bored with hearing me speak as well. When we did the AMA, we realized that it turns out there's a lot more curiosity about everything that we're doing than we realized. And so what we wanted to do is to follow up that AMA is bring you guys out here to have a conversation with us to help sort of disseminate some of these feelings and some of our ideas out to your audiences so people can get a better idea of what's going on."
That's nice. It also seems a bit naive that it kind of got there, because I mean, it seems just like anybody who kind of had their pulse on like what people are thinking, that like not that opinion maybe has turned on Valve, but it's definitely been a different outlook from fans, from kind of like Valve golden child to people saying things like Valve's never going to make another game again, and a lot of people believing that, right? And then all the while people are saying that Steam, Valve's not really coming in and saying anything.
Right. So 2 things about that. I would say first, they kind of address this idea of not having someone that very vocalizes Valve, official stances to the public. Not having community managers and stuff like that. They say basically we want the product to speak for itself, and everyone. It's everyone's responsibility to make sure everything is supposed to be as good as it can be. And so having like a person in the middle that's like kind of speaking for us and like taking the information from fans can kind of get in the way. So what they're saying is it's everyone's responsibility to go out and find out what people are complaining about and to address it. So there's not that middleman. And I kind of pointed out like, well, that means you're not going to have really great communication or like a single line of communication so people can go and say, here is what Valve is saying about this specific topic. And they said, yeah, that's kind of the trade-off that we're making. Doesn't sound like that's going to change. At the same time, they are doing this now. They are making this change, and they told us straight up, we are making 3 virtual reality games. They didn't say anything else about any other types of games, but they're like, we're making 3 full virtual reality games. No one here wants to be experimenting anymore. We're done with We're done making games that are experiments. We're going to keep experimenting, but all of that's going to go towards building full-fledged
Steam
VR
lab too.
Yes, exactly. And they're like, the lab was a great thing. They very specifically said, but the idea isn't to like sort of turn the lab into anything else or to have more experiments along those same lines. It's to have full-fledged games. So they're making games. They're telling us about it. They aren't going into specifics about it. They aren't going to start suddenly having a great line of communication through a community manager or something like that. But they are. It does seem like they are opening up somewhat because they realize that it's turned into an issue.
do you get any sense from them that there's any reason to be nervous about them betting so strongly on the VR horse? Like, what if one of these 3 VR games you talk about is Half-Life 3 or Portal 3, and it's like only a VR game? Is it going to be kind of a disaster if that happens, and not that many people have VR devices and don't feel compelled to get one?
So they seemed very sober about where VR is and their expectations for it. So their line was, VR is growing exactly how we expected, or right in line with our expectations. Then, like right after that, they said our expectations were not the same as some other people in the industries who are trying to launch this as a console, trying to launch this as a this thing that's going to have a big audience immediately, similar to like a PlayStation 4 or something like that. It's expensive and the content isn't there. And they admitted that, so it kind of sounded like they knew it's not where it is. It's not blowing up the world. It's not the hugest thing, and they admitted there is no real good content reason. There is no one game that's going to win over everybody. That's one of the reasons they're trying to make these games. Now they also they repeatedly said we are okay with failing. They're like, if we're not failing, we're probably not doing anything that's worthwhile. We're not doing anything that's interesting. So they blatantly said VR could fail. All of their VR efforts could fail. But the way that they're hedging against that is they are making it open. They are making it so that if anyone else creates a virtual reality device or game, it should be able to run on Steam VR. Now, I've already experienced this. Like my Oculus Rift headset will work with Steam VR just fine. Any game I have on there, it just works, and that's really impressive. And what they're saying is, any new device that comes out, we want it to be able to work, and that's how we are sort of, kind of building this defensive wall against the potential of us failing. Because if Valve fails, it doesn't necessarily mean that VR has failed. So, but in terms of whether or not it's a disaster if Half-Life 3 comes out as a VR game and there isn't a lot of people out there, I don't know if that they're going to like treat it like that. I don't know if they would make a game along those lines that would, if there isn't like, 8 million people ready to buy it because they don't have VR stuff, that it would be a failure. I don't think they would put themselves in that position, but they didn't say anything specific about that.
That's just curiouser. So, kind of talking, did you like get to talk to that Team Fortress guy a lot? Because I'm just really curious about what they think the future of Team Fortress 2 is, if anything.
So, yes. Now, I'm not up to snuff on my Team Fortress 2 happenings in general, but it's kind of actually the first thing that was brought up at all. And actually, if anyone is really curious about this, I'll plug one of the other guys that was there that did very much care about this. He was at Valve News Network on YouTube. He'll probably have a couple videos.
Is this the guy from Youngstown?
He's the guy from Youngstown, yeah. He was asking a lot of Team Fortress 2 questions, and I think he does a lot of videos specifically about that game. So if anyone really does care, check out that. He'll have better information. But basically, he just said, we're working on the next update. We are working on a bunch of user-created content that we're going to release as a package and stuff. Things like that. They're working on a new short film.
Oh, really?
Yes. So like it sounds like it doesn't sound like they are doing these like the Dota 2 7.0 version of a Team Fortress 2 update. It just sounds like they're going to do another Team Fortress 2 update. That's kind of like what it sounds like. They're just going to keep going along the lines of what they've been doing and continuing that, and they're not abandoning it by any stretch.
Yeah, I guess I'm just curious because I don't have any numbers about this, but in my head, I just feel like so many of those players have probably moved to Overwatch.
I think they brought up Overwatch came up as a competitor, and they're like, we don't have any data to support that. What you're basically saying. So who knows what that really means? They did say we really like it. We really like playing it. It's a very good game. That's kind of like the extent of what they said about Overwatch.
Yeah. Okay, that's fair enough.
Any other like big questions about?
Just how about Steam machines? Did they say anything about that still?
So, at the end in that last session when it was just Eric Johnson and Gabe Newell, I kind of tried to ask them about that. So they talked about like Valve's corporate structure and the way the employees work. So if people don't know, no one at Valve really has a title. No one at Valve has a very strict responsibility that they have to do at all times. And they don't even have a budgetary like process. They never set out a budget like here's an idea, here's how much money you can make, so here's the budget for that. They don't do that. What they do is they treat time as the most precious resource. So everyone is allowed to decide like what their time goes to. And And that's why, like, Gabe Newell is on the VR team. Like, during that VR session, it was a bunch of guys and Gabe Newell. He's right there. That's what he thinks his time's, best spent, going towards. So when it came to that last session, and as he was explaining this, I kind of thought about the original reason why Valve went after Steam machines and Steam OS in the first place. They were worried about Windows and Microsoft. And they were worried about like Windows 10 and Windows 8 having these very strict stores that wouldn't enable something like Steam to run unless Steam went through those stores and gave 30% to Microsoft. Like that was like the real concern. And so obviously at one point it seemed like Gabe Newell was saying that my time can best be spent trying to protect the industry from Microsoft. And I kind of asked him that, and he sort of danced around it. He's like, yeah, I think we get the best results when we are working about stuff that excites us because it's sort of a positive thing, like VR, as opposed to like a defensive position where we're worried about another company destroying the gaming industry. But it very much seemed like at this point they are no longer worried about Windows, and they are no longer worried about UWP. They're like, if Microsoft flipped the switch, yeah, that would be a problem. But it's not something that they were really talking about in any way. It's not the thing that they are thinking about day to day anymore. So it seems like they've kind of accepted that Microsoft's going to stay at this status quo. They aren't going to have to worry about it. So the reason that Steam machines and Steam OS existed, the reason that Gabe Newell was putting his time into that has sort of disappeared. So they aren't really working on it anymore because of that. Because they've just the motivation's gone. So
is that kind of like, I don't know if it's a problem. Is that kind of, I don't know. You think it's like an issue of their structure where like these kind of big projects that I assume a lot of energy and money were devoted to kind of just sort of fall off the radar because people inside the company lose interest in them?
Yeah, I would think so, but they very much treated it like it's not a problem. They very much said like, no,
are they just making so much like Steam money that they can really just like they say like, hey, if VR fails, whatever, we just invested a few billion in that. Okay.
Right. So that's very much the impression that I got. So he was saying, like Gabe Newell would say, I tell other CEOs about our corporate structure and that we don't have a budgetary process, and they're like, you're either incredibly irresponsible or you're lying, like you're not telling the truth. And like he's like, but no, it actually just works. And I'm like thinking in the back of my head when he says this, and I didn't bring this up, and I should have. Like, it probably works because like your bread and butter is making so much money that you can afford to have like time be your most precious resource as opposed to money, which is almost every other company's most precious resource. So yeah, I definitely get the sense that the Steam just makes so much money that
let's not care. If there's no Steam, they would have released a Half-Life 3 right now, just that they could have made some Half-Life 3 money.
Right.
They don't need Half-Life 3 money.
Right, and they said like, we don't have to make a game that like, oh, we have to make the quarter. We have to make the quarter. Like we have to have this game out before the end of the quarter so that we have the money coming in so that our financials look good. They blatantly said, we don't have to do that. And they didn't say it's because Steam's making so much money, but it's because Steam is making so much money.
It's not because Steam machines are making so much money.
No, yeah. And Steam machine, yeah, like I said, the motivations for Steam machine was this whole other thing that they're just, clearly they aren't worried about it anymore. So Steam machines have kind of gone away. Instead, they've put their efforts into VR, which is their new motivation, their new reason for doing things. And now we're seeing their efforts there. So it's kind of interesting to see like how that works and to see them sort of talk about that. It's a very unique company, and it was cool to kind of get up there and kind of see them.
Sure it was fun.
Yeah, it was.
Was it like a cool office to like or building to walk around?
Yeah, I remember when I was talking about going to the bathroom. One of the reasons I brought it up is because Radiohead was playing and it was cool music. But then at the sink, you don't just have soap and water. There was like shampoo and like a whole stack of razors and shaving cream and like warm towels and all these like toothbrushes and mouthwash, all this other stuff here that it's like, okay, people are like supposed to like take really great care of themselves while they're here at this office. And the office itself was very cool. There's VR stations set up and all these cool things on the wall and cool art. So I liked it a lot.
But like, did anything there get you excited about what Valve is doing or like what is coming from Valve? Or do you still kind of feel like Valve is sort of this like, and like that's kind of my thing with Valve, is that they used to be this game developer I was really excited about. I understand why they don't, they're kind of more than that now, but I'm just not really excited about Valve the VR company and Valve the or Valve the hardware company as they tried to be for a little bit, or Valve the whatever they're doing.
I'm of two minds about this. I'm right there with you where it's like I was expecting, or I'm always expecting Valve to always be this game company because in my head, that's what they are. They're a company that makes games. But at the same time, I'm always very impressed with the way that they are, with the way they build the things that they build. So one of the examples is this move from Steam Greenlight to Steam Direct, which is Steam Greenlight was their user voting service where small developers who have never had a game on Steam before could put up a game and the community would vote on which games they wanted to see on Steam. Valve would look at some of these games and some of them would come across to be on Steam. Now with Steam Direct, developers just apply for like a bank account style account on Steam and they pay a fee and they can put up any game they want onto the surface basically, with very few exceptions. And so the reason they're doing this is because they recognize how big they are, how important they are to the PC gaming economy. How important that, like, if you have a game that you're making and you want to find an audience, it has to be on Steam, right? Mm-hmm. If you're making a PC game. So they recognize that they can't really get in the way anymore because if Valve is the company deciding what games go on Steam, and which they have every right to do, but they're saying, no, we're not going to do that anymore because actually what right do we have to decide which games succeed and fail in the market? Because Valve is so important. They're so integral. I always say that word wrong. They're so important to PC gaming that if you aren't on there, you'll fail. So if they decide a game's not on Steam, it fails. So they really have that power. So them recognizing that and saying, no, we're going to build this different system specifically because we own too much of the market. And because, if we're curating, we're picking the winners and losers, that's bad. I get excited about that because I think that's very forward thinking. A lot of their Steam users don't even want that. They want the old Steam that was curated and only had the games that they like and didn't have all these stupid visual novels, things like that. And they're going against what their customers say they want. And doing this very forward-thinking thing, and I just think it's impressive. It always impresses me, and it was kind of really fascinating to get that first-hand explanation for these decisions.
Fair enough.
Yeah. I'm trying to think if there's anything else there.
Basically, I just wish that like you went in there and they're like, surprise,
I know,
3, and I mean, I almost hate being like that way, but
no,
it's
and you could tell. So we all like. In the email, the invite from Valve, when Doug sent it over, he's like, hey, come up to Valve. We're inviting you. There's going to be a few other journalists there. We want to talk to you. And I was like, okay, yeah, I think we can make this happen. And they're like, yeah, we should pay to get us out there. That's going to be worth it, right? Then the next day, he's like, oh, just so you know, we're not going to be making any new announcements. And it's like, oh. So basically saying we're not going to be talking about Half-Life 3. That's what that means. Right. Everything else, Left 4 Dead 3 or whatever. But we're not talking about Half-Life 3. And you could tell when we're all sitting in the circle, all the other reporters, that no one wants to be the person that asks about Half-Life 3. But we all want to know about it. We all want to hear what their line is and what they're going to say. And, when it kind of did come up, it was just, we're not going to talk about the specifics of any of our games or anything like that. But so it was just kind of that was disappointing.
Yeah. But it's like there's almost these other threads, like not even just like that, but just like the way like the community is like almost in despair about the idea of it anymore, and how the expected thing is that there just will never be one at this point, and just I don't know. There's a lot of interesting things there.
Yeah, it is, and you get the idea that they are very confident about the way they do things because they have all this data that says in reality people don't care as much about Half-Life 3 as they claim they do because they're playing all these other games that we are enabling because we're putting all this work into Steam and people are very happy with these things. They're creating these connected economies where people are making items for Dota 2 and they're making a living off that stuff. And they admitted like their customer service is really crappy and they're always trying to make it better, and they detailed a bunch of stuff like that. I'll have a story about that stuff. It's kind of wishy-washy on that too. You get the idea they never want to put a person between them and the person actually working on the product. So they don't want to have like a phone line to call for customer service. They don't want to have a community manager. They just want to have the engineers like rubbing up against the community, and that it goes bad for them. I think a lot of times, and they admit that. And I do think that's why they kind of brought us out there. So,
all right, fair enough.
Yeah.
Well, it sounds like you had a fun.
It was. I think Valve's a very interesting company, and I do think they're in a very unique position in the market right now compared to where they were, what they are, what people consider them to be, and what they're doing. So it's cool to cover them. It's cool to get the opportunity to go up there and talk with them. So I'm glad I was able to do it. All right, Mike. I think that's going to wrap it up. I don't think I'm going to have a bunch more stories. Keep an eye on GamesBeat.com if you're interested in any of this. There's some stuff I didn't cover here that I just can't remember because it's all my notes. And I'll just post it as a story soon. So keep an eye on GamesBeat.com if you are interested in anything more about Valve. But yeah, Mike, I think that's going to wrap it up. I think what we should do now is have you explain to people where they can find you on the internet.
Oh, well, I'm on GamesBeat all the time, right there, GamesBeat.com. Follow me on Twitter at Tolkoto, TLOKOTO. And I also do the Exploding Bro podcast every week with my brother. That's at ebpodcast.com.
And let's see, I'm on YouTube. I make some videos there, youtube.com/Jeffrey Grubb. I think that's right. I actually need to double check that, but I think that's right. I'll be having some videos go up this week. I might actually put some of the interview audio from Valve up, just because there's some interesting stuff that I think people should hear raw. And some hardware reviews. I got this headset. I'm going to review that soon. And then on Twitter, and let's see, I always got to bring up, because I can never remember my Twitter handle, and Mike always helps me by writing it down for me. I'm Jeff Grubb, Poop Butt Fart McFarties, P-Man CGI Face, Bad Dad Odyssey to Buttland 2, Dryland is not a Mythbuster, Orange Box.
There you go.
Orange Box. It's only $30. Only $30, and you get all that stuff.
Orange Box, that's 10 years old now. That's depressing.
That was a different kind of... That's what they also said, like, consoles. We're still disappointed with consoles, in case you were curious. They are still disappointed with consoles. Surprise. I'm actually just Jeff Grubb on Twitter. Like, just flex with me in the podcast rundown. Google
Valve could just actually make, like, a real console, and it would be cool, but they, like... The Steam machines are such a half measure. I'm not going to get into it now. But
you're right. That could be, like, maybe a topic for another time when we have nothing else to talk about.